They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. The sweetest revenge is the kind that's been simmering for exactly 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days, long enough to plan every detail, gather every piece of evidence, and watch your target live their perfect stolen life before you take it all away. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of how my sister Emma stole my entire life while I was fighting for mine in a hospital bed. And how I made her pay for every single stolen moment. Some people call what I did cruel. I call it justice. You can decide for yourself. Before I tell you how I systematically destroyed my sister's perfect marriage and reputation, I need you to understand something. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other wound. If you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button. If you believe some betrayals are unforgivable, subscribe. Because this story has more twists than a DNA test at a family reunion, and you won't want to miss a single detail. The accident happened on October 15, 2021 at 3:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was checking my phone to see if the florist had confirmed the white peonies for my wedding centerpieces when the drunk driver ran the red light. 3 weeks. That's how long I was in a medically induced coma while my brain swelling went down. 3 weeks where my world existed in machines and monitors and the constant hum of life support. 3 weeks where my sister Emma held my power of attorney and made decisions in my best interest. When I woke up on November 5th, the first thing I saw was my mother's tear-stained face. Rachel, honey, you're awake. Thank God, you're awake. The second thing I noticed was that she wasn't wearing the mother of the bride dress we'd picked out together. She was wearing black. Where's David? I asked. My voice was hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed 2 days earlier. Is he okay? Was he hurt in the accident? Mom's face crumpled. That's when I knew something was wrong. Something beyond my traumatic brain injury and the steel rod in my left leg. Honey, there's something we need to tell you. About David. About Emma. The rest came in fragments. While I was fighting for my life, my fiancé David and my sister Emma had found comfort in each other. While I was unconscious, they'd fallen in love. While doctors weren't sure if I'd ever wake up, they'd decided not to waste the wedding plans I'd spent 18 months perfecting. They got married on November 1st, the date that was supposed to be mine, in the venue I'd booked, with the flowers I'd chosen, wearing the dress I'd spent 6 months altering to fit my body perfectly. The only thing they changed was the bride. We thought you'd want us to be happy, Emma said when she finally visited me a week later. She was wearing my engagement ring, the vintage Art Deco sapphire that had belonged to David's grandmother. You always said you wanted me to find someone like David. Well, I found David. She laughed at her own joke. Actually laughed. The wedding was beautiful, Rachel. Everyone said so. We kept most of your decorations. The peonies were gorgeous, by the way. The photographer said it was the most romantic ceremony he'd ever shot. I stared at my sister, my younger sister who I'd helped through college, who I'd given a job at my marketing firm, who I'd been planning to ask to be my maid of honor, and felt something break inside my chest that had nothing to do with my physical injuries. Where are my things? I asked quietly. What things? My apartment. My job. My life. Emma's smile faltered slightly. Well, since you were incapacitated, and we weren't sure when or if you'd recover, David moved out of your apartment. The lease was up anyway. And I had to let the company know you wouldn't be returning to work. Traumatic brain injury, you know. Liability issues. She said it so matter-of-factly. Like she was discussing the weather. I fired you from my own company? Well, technically, I fired you. David said I should handle the business side of things since I knew the clients. Someone had to keep things running. The Peterson account alone was worth $2.3 million. We couldn't just let that go. That's when I understood. This wasn't about love or comfort or grief. This was a calculated takeover of my entire existence. While I was unconscious, Emma hadn't just stolen my fiancé, she'd stolen my business, my clients, my future, everything I'd built over 7 years of 18-hour days and sacrificed weekends. The company is mine, Emma. I started it. My name is on everything. Was yours, she corrected gently. Power of attorney is a wonderful thing, Rachel. I had to make some difficult decisions while you were away. Selling the business to David and me seemed like the best option. We got a very fair price for it, market value. The money is in a trust fund for your medical expenses. I found out later that market value was $50,000 for a business worth $3.2 million. They'd essentially stolen it legally while I was fighting for my life. The next 6 months were a blur of physical therapy, legal consultations, and slowly understanding the full scope of what they'd done. Emma had used my power of attorney to sell my business to herself and David for a fraction of its worth, break my apartment lease and donate my furniture to charity, cancel my credit cards and close my bank accounts, transfer my clients to their new company, even canceled my gym membership and Netflix subscription. They'd erased me so thoroughly that I practically had to rebuild my identity from scratch. When I tried to contest the business sale, I learned that Emma had been smart. Everything was technically legal. Power of attorney gives broad authority, and since I was unconscious for 3 weeks, she could claim she was protecting my interests. The lawyer I consulted was blunt. Unless you can prove fraud or that she was acting against your interests, there's not much we can do. Courts generally don't second-guess medical decisions made during emergencies. But Emma had made one crucial mistake. She'd gotten greedy. I spent the next year quietly rebuilding my life. I got a small apartment, freelanced with my old clients who weren't bound by non-compete clauses, and slowly regained my strength. Everyone felt sorry for poor Rachel, the woman who lost everything while in a coma, whose sister and fiancé fell in love during her tragedy. They made sure everyone knew their version of the story. How they'd maintained vigil at my bedside. How they'd agonized over their feelings. How they'd only acted on their love when it became clear I might never wake up. They were portrayed as tragic lovers, star-crossed by circumstances beyond their control. I let them have their narrative. While they were busy being the sympathetic newlyweds, I was busy being a forensic accountant's dream. See, Emma wasn't as smart as she thought she was. Running a successful marketing business requires more than just stealing client lists. It requires understanding cash flow, profit margins, overhead costs, and tax implications. Emma was great at spending money. She'd always been great at that, but terrible at managing it. Their first mistake was expanding too quickly. With my client list and the wedding gift money from our mutual relatives, they'd leased expensive downtown office space, hired too many employees, and bought equipment they didn't need. Their second mistake was Emma's spending habits. I'd spent 7 years building the business carefully, reinvesting profits, building reserves. Emma saw profit as disposable income. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, a luxury car lease, a honeymoon in the Maldives that costs more than most people make in 6 months. Their third mistake was trusting Emma to handle the books. I taught Emma basic bookkeeping when I gave her a job, but I'd always handled the complex financial management myself. She knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough to spot the warning signs when their cash flow started deteriorating. By month 8 of their marriage, they were behind on payroll. By month 10, they'd lost 3 major clients due to missed deadlines and poor campaign results. By month 12, they were taking cash advances on credit cards to make rent. I know all of this because I'd maintained friendships with several vendors who'd worked with my original company. The print shop owner who'd handled all my campaigns. The graphic designer who'd been an independent contractor. The coffee shop owner next to their new office, who'd watched them go from celebrating daily to arguing in public. Small business communities talk. And I'd been part of that community for 7 years before Emma ever knew it existed. By month 15 of their marriage, I'd established my new consulting firm. I was working with smaller clients, rebuilding slowly, but I was profitable and growing. More importantly, I was patient. Emma and David's company was hemorrhaging money, but they were too proud to admit it. David had quit his stable job as a project manager to focus on their business full-time. Emma had never developed the discipline to actually run a company. She was great at client meetings and presentations, terrible at follow-through and execution. I watched from a distance as they made increasingly desperate decisions. They took on clients they weren't qualified to serve. They overpromised on deliverables they couldn't possibly meet. They hired freelancers they couldn't afford and then argued with them about payment. The Peterson account, the $2.3 million client Emma had been so concerned about losing, fired them in month 16. Poor campaign performance, missed deadlines, and what the client described as unprofessional behavior and communications. That's when I made my first move. I called Peterson Industries and introduced myself as a freelance marketing consultant. During our conversation, I mentioned that I'd actually developed their original brand strategy and campaign framework several years ago, before I'd been forced to step away due to medical issues. "You're Rachel Morrison," the marketing director asked. "We've been trying to figure out who created the original framework. It was brilliant, exactly what we needed. What happened to you?" "Long story," I said. "But I'm available now if you're looking for someone who understands your brand." 3 weeks later, I had the Peterson account back. At full market rate. With a 3-year contract. Emma found out when she saw the announcement on Peterson's LinkedIn page, celebrating their new partnership with Morrison Consulting. She called me that night screaming, "You stole our client." "That's our account." "Actually," I said calmly, "that was always my client. I created their entire brand strategy. You inherited the relationship when you stole my business, but you couldn't maintain it. I'm just finishing what I started." This is sabotage, Rachel. This is business interference. This is capitalism, Emma. If you can't deliver results, clients find someone who can. She hung up on me, but not before I heard David in the background asking what was wrong. The fight that followed was loud enough that their neighbors later mentioned it to the coffee shop owner, who mentioned it to me. That's when I knew they were starting to crack. The final phase of my plan began 18 months after I woke up from my coma. Emma and David's business was failing, their marriage was strained, and their perfect stolen life was crumbling under the weight of their own incompetence. But I wanted more than just financial ruin. I wanted them to understand exactly what they'd taken from me, and I wanted everyone who'd celebrated their tragic love story to know the truth. I started with their wedding photographer. Marcus Chin had shot my original engagement photos and was supposed to photograph my wedding. When Emma and David stole my wedding plans, they'd kept Marcus too. During our coffee meeting, Marcus admitted he'd always felt uncomfortable about the situation. "It was weird, Rachel. They used your exact shot list, your timeline, even the poses we'd planned for your engagement session. Emma kept saying Rachel would have wanted it this way, but it felt wrong. I bet you still have all the photos, don't you? Including the planning meetings and prep shots?" "Of course. I keep everything for at least 3 years. Including the photos of Emma in my wedding dress during the final fitting, the one where she's laughing about how perfectly it fit her." Marcus winced. "She said some things that day that, well, they bothered me. About how you'd never wake up to need the dress anyway. About how she was doing you a favor by not letting it go to waste. Would you be willing to share those photos with me?" "For personal reasons." Marcus hesitated for about 10 seconds. Then he nodded. "The photos were damning. Emma is trying on my dress laughing. Emma and David kissing in front of my wedding cake, the one I'd spent hours designing with the baker. Emma is posing with my bridesmaids in my bridal suite, holding my bouquet. But the worst photo was one Marcus had captured accidentally Emma on the phone during her dress fitting, apparently talking to someone about me. Marcus had enhanced the audio that went with the shot. Emma's voice was clear. "She's not going to wake up, Mom. The doctors said the brain damage is extensive. Even if she does wake up, she'll probably be a vegetable. David and I are just making the best of a terrible situation. Besides, she always said she wanted me to be happy." She was laughing when she said it. The second anniversary of their wedding, my stolen wedding, fell on a Saturday. Emma had planned a party to celebrate, despite their financial troubles. One last desperate attempt to maintain appearances. I wasn't invited, obviously. But social media is a wonderful thing, and Emma had always been an oversharer. The party was at the same venue where they'd stolen my wedding. Emma wore the same dress, my dress, that she'd worn 2 years earlier. She'd even hired the same photographer, Marcus, though she didn't know about our recent coffee meeting. I arrived at the venue at 8:30 p.m., right as the dinner service was ending and the dancing was about to begin. I wore a simple black dress and carried a small gift bag. "Rachel." Emma's voice was brittle when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "I came to give you your anniversary gift," I said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "I thought it was time to celebrate your marriage properly." I handed her the gift bag. Inside was a photo album, leather-bound, expensive, beautiful. The kind of anniversary gift that looks thoughtful and sentimental. Emma opened it in front of everyone, expecting to see wedding photos or couple shots. Instead, she found page after page of documentation. Bank statements showing their company's financial collapse. Screenshots of client reviews detailing missed deadlines and poor performance. Legal documents showing the real value of the business they'd stolen from me. But the last page was the worst. It was a printout of an email Emma had sent to my former employees the day after she'd fired me from my own company. Rachel's condition is permanent. The doctors don't expect her to ever return to work, assuming she wakes up at all. We need to move forward without her. Please transfer all client files to my personal drive and remove her access to all accounts. Effective immediately, I'm the sole owner of Morrison Marketing. Anyone who has a problem with this transition can find employment elsewhere. She'd sent that email while I was still on life support, before the doctors had any idea what my prognosis would be. Where did you get this? Emma whispered. Discovery is a beautiful thing, I said. Did you know that when you're planning to sue someone for fraud, you can subpoena all kinds of records? Including emails from their company servers. David appeared at Emma's side. What's going on? Show him the rest, I said to Emma. Show him the bank statements. Show him how you've destroyed everything I built while convincing everyone you were the victim of tragic circumstances. Emma's hands were shaking as she flipped through the pages. Wedding guests were starting to gather around us, curious about the commotion. This is private information, David said. You can't just. Actually, I can, I interrupted. See, when you steal someone's business using fraudulent power of attorney documentation, and when you lie to medical professionals about their prognosis to maintain control, and when you commit identity theft by using their vendor relationships and credit history, well, that's called fraud. And fraud makes everything a public record once you file charges. The silence that followed was profound. 60 wedding guests, all staring at Emma and David, all processing what I'd just said. You filed charges? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. I filed charges 6 months ago. The investigation has been ongoing while you've been struggling to keep your stolen business afloat. Turns out, the FBI takes medical fraud very seriously, especially when it involves someone who is incapacitated and vulnerable. I pulled out another envelope. But that's not your anniversary gift. This is. Inside were divorce papers. Not for me, I'd never been married, thanks to their theft, but papers I'd had drawn up documenting exactly how their marriage had been built on fraud, theft, and conspiracy. What is this? David asked, taking the papers. It's the truth, I said. It's documentation of how Emma manipulated you into stealing my life while I was unconscious. It's proof that she lied to you about my prognosis, about the business value, about everything. She used you, David. Just like she used my power of attorney. I looked around at their wedding guests, people who'd celebrated their tragic love story for 2 years. Did you all know that Emma told the hospital I'd want them to be happy? Did you know she was laughing about wearing my wedding dress while I was still in a coma? Did you know she fired me from my own company via email while I was on life support? The crowd was murmuring now. Phones were coming out. In the age of social media, moments like this don't stay private. Marcus, I called to the photographer, who was standing at the edge of the crowd with his camera. Would you mind sharing some of the photos from their original wedding? Specifically, the ones where Emma is discussing my medical condition while trying on my dress. Marcus looked uncomfortable, but he'd already agreed to this. He pulled out his phone and started airdropping photos to people nearby. The gasps and whispers grew louder as people saw the images. Emma was laughing in my dress. Emma was on the phone, saying I'd never wake up. Emma is posing with my flowers in my bridal suite. 2 years ago, I was fighting for my life, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. While I was unconscious, my sister stole my fiancé, my business, my wedding, and my entire future. She convinced everyone it was a tragic love story. Tonight, you get to see what it really was: fraud, theft, and betrayal. Emma had sunk into a chair, the photo album clutched in her hands. David was reading the legal documents, his face growing paler with each page. The FBI will be here Monday morning to arrest you both, I continued. The charges include conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. Yes, incapacitated person abuse falls under the same statute. You're looking at 5 to 10 years each, assuming you're convicted on all counts. I smiled at the crowd. But tonight, let's celebrate their anniversary. 2 years of living a lie. 2 years of destroying everything I built. 2 years of playing victim while being the predators. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Emma? The dress looks better on me. It was made for my body, after all. That was 8 months ago. Emma and David were arrested the following Monday, just as I'd promised. The investigation revealed even more fraud than I'd initially discovered. They'd been embezzling from client accounts to fund their lifestyle, claiming business expenses for personal purchases, and lying to investors about the company's financial health. Emma pleaded guilty to avoid trial and received 7 years in federal prison. David got 5 years after cooperating with investigators. Their business was liquidated to pay restitution to clients and vendors. I bought back my original client list during the bankruptcy auction for $15,000, about what Emma probably spent on shoes during their marriage. The wedding photos Marcus shared went viral on social media. Not because people thought it was entertaining, but because it sparked a national conversation about medical fraud and the abuse of power of attorney privileges. Emma became the poster child for what not to do when someone you love is incapacitated. Their marriage lasted exactly 2 years and 3 days. David filed for divorce while they were both in jail, claiming he'd been manipulated and defrauded by Emma. He wasn't wrong. As for me, Morrison Consulting is thriving. I have 12 employees, my original office space, and a waiting list of clients who want to work with the woman who refused to stay down. The near-death experience gave me perspective, but Emma's betrayal gave me focus. I sleep well at night. My conscience is clear. Some people say I went too far, that I should have forgiven my family. But those people have never woken up from a coma to discover their entire life has been stolen by someone they trusted completely. I didn't destroy Emma and David. They destroyed themselves with their greed, their lies, and their complete lack of conscience. I just made sure the world could see who they really were beneath the facade of tragic love. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's always necessary. That's my story. How I went from victim to victor, from stolen life to reclaimed power. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment and let me know. How far would you go for justice? What would you do if someone stole your entire life while you were helpless? Don't forget to like this video if it kept you hooked, and subscribe for more true stories about betrayal, revenge, and the price we pay for trusting the wrong people. Hit that notification bell because trust me, the next story will shock you even more. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own choices. I'll see you in the next one.